You're about to return to the year 1907 and the tea plantations of India. But amidst the buzz of activity, a tale of terror unfolded. Our storyteller recounts a true experience, so incredible it defies belief. A story of man versus beast, set against the backdrop of a bygone colonial era. Prepare to listen to Bug-Eyed Tales, adaptation of Walked Off by a Tiger by a Tubton of Jobhat, Kookilamukh, Assam.
That must have been an awful experience of yours with the tiger, Barrett,
Terrible.
was the somewhat curt reply. And Barrett's features assumed a troubled look as he relapsed into silence, as if the subject were disagreeable to him. We were sitting, Sam Barrett and I, at one of the little round tables one evening after dinner, at the Great Eastern Hotel in Calcutta. The man I was addressing was in the prime of life, but with hair white as snow, forming a marked contrast to his handsome, well-preserved features. Both of us were tea planters of many years' standing, but had never previously met, our estates lying far apart, in the Naugong district of Assam. Tiger Barrett, as he was always called, was on his way back to his estate after a furlough spent in England. During the short week of our acquaintance, I had become sufficiently intimate with him to venture on breaking through his reserve, and being filled with a desire to hear one of the best-known authentic adventures in India from the victim's own lips, I took courage to say, "Barrett, if it be not an impertinence on my part, or distressing to you to tell me your adventure, will you relate it to me as I have heard so many and conflicting versions of it?" After a pause he replied,
Yes, I'll tell you, though I hate to repeat the story, partly because in most cases, especially at home in England when relating my awful experience, I noticed signs of incredulity or suppressed mirth amongst my listeners. Besides, the recollection of it, though all this happened many years ago, brings back to me most painful memories. It is bad enough to have gone through all this without having fellows looking at you as if you were a preposterous liar or a hopeless lunatic. But as you know, there are men still alive who were either witnesses of the adventure or saw me immediately after in my torn and lacerated condition. One evening, as young Radcliffe and I were riding home from the station, where we had been on court business, we turned in at B, a neighbouring tea estate, where dwelt our mutual friend and manager, Jack Williamson. We found him with a touch of fever, and so to keep him company, and as it was rather late, we elected to accept his invitation to dine and sleep. Over our whisky and sodas in the veranda, previous to our meal, our host remarked,
"By the way, you chaps, I had a bit of an adventure here last night. My chowkidar, a watchman, was carried out of this veranda about 10 o'clock by a tiger, just as I had cleared off to bed. The poor fellow's yells, of course, brought me out with my rifle, double quick, but Stripes had disappeared in the dark, and I couldn't get a sight at him. And by Jove, his tracks this morning showed him to be a monster. He happened to pass pretty close to the coolie lines, and the poor chowkidar's cries, as he was being carried along, brought out a lot of coolies, who, with torches, bamboos, and sticks, gave chase and caused the tiger to drop his victim and decamp, leaving the poor fellow terribly mangled, but still alive. He managed to linger till morning, and then he died."
"Look here, Jack," I broke in. "What have you got in the way of shooting irons?"
"What for? Do you suppose the tiger is such an ass as to come back again after being hunted away by the coolies last night?"
"I certainly do," was my decided reply to our host. "That tiger was a man-eater, take my word for it. And what is more, he will come back again for the prey he missed last night, after the manner of his kind."
"Well, there's a Snyder sporting rifle, Government Association ditto, and a DB 12-bore gun with plenty of ammunition for all."
They were duly distributed, and arrangements made to sit up after dinner for our blood-thirsty friend. About 10 o'clock, our host suggested it was time to take up our positions, which was done. Williamson and Radcliffe in the front veranda at either end, and I myself in the back veranda. All lights were put out except one in the centre room, and even this was turned very low. I must here remark that many of the bungalows in those days were built on earthen plinths called betés, about 2 feet to 3 feet from the ground, and not as now, on high chungs from 6 feet to 10 feet in the air. Well, 10 o'clock had come and gone, 11 o'clock, and no tiger. This is getting monotonous, I thought to myself. However, I will give Stripes another half hour, and then go and see what the other fellows are up to. I'm no hand at glowing descriptions, so I'll just tell you that the half hour came, and with it the tiger. I had, in despair of seeing our night visitor, leaned my rifle against the wall and put my hand and arm as far as the elbow round the angle of the veranda wall to take a final look round without stepping off the plinth just before joining my comrades, when I suddenly found my wrist seized in the jaws of the man-eater. He must have been only a few feet away when I was in the act of putting my arm round the back wall, and at that instant seized me. What could I do? It was useless struggling with the gigantic brute. The pain was absolutely excruciating as his great fangs crushed through the flesh and bones of my wrist. "See here,"
said Barrett, as he displayed his left hand and wrist, showing the deep indentations of the great teeth and protuberances of bone forced through and bulging out. "Great Scott! How you must have suffered," I exclaimed.
"There is no denying that,"
he replied.
But it was nothing to what followed. Seeing resistance futile, I stepped backwards from the plinth onto the ground, yielding myself to the tiger and realizing that the slightest struggle would result in instant death, and thus I walked at the side of the tiger with my wrist in his jaws. At the instant of the tiger seizing me, I gave a shout to my friends. "The tiger has got me! Help, for heaven's sake!" It appears that they also had grown tired of waiting and were dozing in long cane chairs with their guns beside them. At my cry for help, however, they sprang up and rushed into the bungalow, closing the doors, for the moment paralyzed with fear. Meanwhile, I was forced to walk at the side of this man-eater, every depression in the ground causing me agony as the brute's teeth jarred and wrenched the bones of my wrist. We had proceeded in this manner for some 50 yards when he neared a nullah, or dry watercourse, which formed a boundary between the bungalow compound and the tea bushes on the other side. In a flash, I realized that if the monster once got me into this nullah, I was doomed. I gave one heart-rending shout, "For God's sake, you fellows, come and help me!" This was enough for young Radcliffe. Without a moment's hesitation, he burst through the back door, rifle in hand, to which, by the way, he had fixed the bayonet, and rushed down to my rescue. The tiger had now brought me to the brink of the nullah, and I, now knowing that help was at hand, for Radcliffe had shouted, "Hold on, I'm coming," I drew back as far as my strength and the agony I was suffering would permit, upon which the tiger turned deliberately round, facing me, and raising himself up on his hind legs, placed his immense front paws on my shoulders, but never for one instant loosing the grip he had on my wrist. Can I describe the agony of mind and body that I endured at that supreme moment? Thank God it lasted only a few seconds, but it appeared to me hours, a lifetime. I exerted my whole strength, and I am a powerful man, every nerve, every muscle, to withstand the forward pressure of this heavy beast, with one leg thrown back to act as a stay, and wondering when I should be overcome by the tiger's superior weight and great strength. There was a flash, a loud report, and the tiger fell over, backwards, loosening the grip on me as he fell. "Run for your life, man!" shouted Radcliffe. I needed no second warning to make the best use of my legs, but I was weak with pain and loss of blood, and Radcliffe had gained the bungalow and was indoors some seconds before I reached it. The tiger, meanwhile, had partially recovered himself, was on his legs again, and once more chasing me. As I placed my foot on the step, I was hurled forward across the veranda and into the centre room, the mat door giving way with my weight, and the tiger falling across my body, dead. Do you see this mark on my cheek?
asked Barrett, showing a red sear about 2 inches in length.
That was a piece taken out by one of the tiger's claws as he rose onto my shoulders.
He added,
Radcliffe had great difficulty in the uncertain light, for the moon was just commencing to rise, in distinguishing between the tiger and myself. And it was only when close up to me that he forced his rifle over my shoulder and sent 6 inches of steel into the monster's breast, firing the weapon at the same time, and thus saving my life. It remains only for me to say that it was many months before I was well enough to get about again. I nearly died of blood poisoning and was shipped off home as soon as I could be moved. At Madras, the skipper of the steamer suggested I go ashore and end my days peacefully in hospital, as I was looked upon as a dead man. I had booked my passage for home, however. I intended to get there if I could. With the result that after passing Colombo I took a turn for the better, and am now, as you see me, a bit shaken perhaps, but still pursuing my old calling in this country.
And so, dear listener, we bid farewell to this story so astonishing, yet rooted in fact, as told to the author by the victim himself. Although this happened over a century ago, the tea planters of Assam still whisper of this incident, a reminder of the thin line between human dominion and the untamed wilderness. Though names were altered by the author to protect the privacy of his friends at the time, the essence of this chilling account remains unaltered. Having walked the lush lands of Assam and Bengal for 27 years, the author could attest to the truth of this story. Tonight's tale is part of the curated collection of bug-eyed tales produced by C.E. Rotor, where truth is often more terrifying than fiction.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this tale, please show your support by liking and subscribing to the Bug-Eyed Tales channel. Your encouragement helps us spin more yarns for your listening pleasure. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.